The conference room aboard the Galactic Council Outpost Station fell silent as the holographic display rotated slowly in the center. Planet GC-7742 hung there in simulated glory, looking deceptively peaceful with its blue oceans and green landmasses. The data streaming beside it told a different story. Vrenth, the Quillen liaison officer, clicked his mandibles nervously as he watched the four humans study the display. His species had evolved on a gentle world where the temperature never dropped below 15 degrees or rose above 25. Where the gravity was a comfortable 0.7 standard. Where the most dangerous predator was roughly the size of a human house cat. The idea of anyone voluntarily visiting GC-7742 made his internal organs twist with anxiety. "This is a Class 12 death world," Vrenth said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic common. "The highest danger classification that exists. Please understand what this means." Doyun, the leader of the human survey team, leaned forward with his hands clasped on the table. His dark eyes scanned the data with methodical precision. "We understand perfectly. Please continue with the briefing." Vrenth's antenna drooped. Humans were such strange creatures. They stood upright on two legs in a way that seemed inefficient. They had soft skin, with no natural armor. Their lifespans were barely a century, and yet they had spread across dozens of worlds in just 3 generations since joining the Galactic Council. It made no sense. "The gravity is 1.4 times Earth standard," Vrenth continued. "Most species would be crushed under their own weight within hours. The atmosphere contains sulfur dioxide and other compounds that are toxic to 90% of known sapient life. Temperature variations range from -40 degrees to +55 degrees in a single planetary rotation. Seismic activity registers an average of 3 significant quakes per local week. And the predators, how big are the predators?" asked Heejin, the xenobiologist. She had bright, curious eyes, and a smile that never seemed to fade. Vrenth found it deeply unsettling given the circumstances. "The apex predator masses approximately 400 kilograms, Vrenth said. "It has armored hide, serrated claws, and can run at speeds exceeding 60 kilometers per hour. So, like a bear mixed with a crocodile," said Taman, the geologist. He was thin and wore glasses that he kept pushing up his nose. "Sounds fun." Vrenth stared at him. Jiwan, the engineer, was already making notes on her datapad. She had practical hands and wore her hair tied back in a simple style. "What about the seismic activity? Are there volcanic zones we should avoid for the base camp? You should avoid the entire planet." Vrenth's voice rose in pitch, making the translator crackle. 3 Quillen survey teams have attempted to study Class 10 worlds. None survived longer than 2 days. Class 12 is beyond comprehension. The atmospheric storms alone would tear most species apart. The radiation levels during solar flares require shielding that— "We have shielding," Doyun said calmly. "And our equipment is rated for these conditions. Earth herself is classified as a Class 9 death world by galactic standards. If I remember correctly." Vrenth's antenna drooped even further. Yes, he had seen that classification. At first, he thought it was an error in the database. How could a species evolve on a Class 9 death world? Earth had hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that could blacken the sky for years, deserts where water was scarce, frozen wastelands where temperatures dropped to unthinkable lows. And somehow, humans had not only survived but thrived. They had built civilizations in all of those places. "This is different," Vrenth tried again. "GC-7742 combines all of those dangers in one location. It is not just one hostile environment. It is every hostile environment simultaneously. So it's like camping in Australia," Taman said with a slight grin. Heijin laughed. Jiwan smiled. Even Doyun's lips twitched upward slightly. Vrenth had no idea what Australia was, but he understood the humans were not taking this seriously. He pulled up another screen. "Look at the atmospheric composition again," Oxygen levels are within acceptable range, yes. But the sulfur compounds will corrode your equipment. The dust storms will strip metal. The temperature swings will cause thermal stress fractures in any structure you build. That's why we're bringing reinforced materials, Jiwan said. And we have thermal expansion joints in the prefab structures. We've built bases on Europa and Titan. We know cold. We've built on Venus's floating platforms. We know corrosive. This is just a combination. The predators. Vrenth tried again. Our animals? Sunwoo interrupted. He had just entered the conference room, late as usual. The security officer was broad-shouldered and moved with military precision. Behind him came Mireille, the medic, carrying a large pack of supplies. Animals can be understood. They have patterns, territories, behaviors. We've dealt with polar bears, lions, saltwater crocodiles, and great white sharks. We know predators. Vrenth wanted to bang his head against the table. How could they be so casual about this? Mireille set down her pack and pulled out a datapad. I've prepared medical supplies for toxic exposure, thermal injury, blunt force trauma, radiation poisoning, and approximately 30 other scenarios. We'll be fine. You'll be dead. Vrenth's translator practically shouted the word. I have reviewed the data for 3 cycles. I have consulted with experts from 7 different species. They all agree. This planet will kill anyone who sets foot on it. The Galactic Council has forbidden colonization. This survey is only approved because your species insisted, and frankly, we expect to be recovering your bodies within 48 hours. The room fell silent again. The humans looked at each other. Then Doyun stood up and walked over to Vrenth. He was tall, and Vrenth had to tilt his head back to meet the human's eyes. Vrenth, Doyun said gently, we appreciate your concern. Truly, we do. But humans have been surviving in impossible places for our entire history. Our ancestors walked out of Africa across deserts and ice sheets. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They climbed the highest mountains just to see what was there. We're explorers and survivors. It's what we do. But why? Vrenth asked. It was the question that haunted him about humans. Why risk your lives for a planet that doesn't want you there? Heijin smiled and stood up as well. Because it's there. Because it's a challenge. Because someone rated it unlivable. And we want to prove them wrong. And honestly, the data you showed us looks like a really interesting camping trip. Vrenth gave up. There was no reasoning with them. He had done his duty and warned them extensively. If they wanted to throw their lives away on this death world, that was their choice. He pulled up the departure schedule on his screen. Your shuttle departs in 6 hours, he said quietly. May your gods watch over you, because I fear you will need them. Doyun smiled and extended his hand. Vrenth had learned this was a human gesture of respect and agreement. He reached out one of his 4 limbs and grasped it awkwardly. Thank you, Vrenth, Doyun said. We'll send regular updates. Try not to worry too much. 6 hours later, Vrenth watched from the observation deck as the human shuttle detached from the station and began its descent toward GC 7742. The planet's atmosphere was churning with storm systems. Lightning flashed between the clouds. The shuttle looked so small and fragile as it plunged into that chaos. Inside the shuttle, the humans were having a different conversation. Did anyone remember to pack the coffee? Taemin asked. Yes, Jiwan said. And the hot sauce, Heijin insisted. It's not camping without hot sauce, Heijin said firmly. Doyun checked the control panel as the shuttle began to shake from atmospheric turbulence. The instruments were going crazy. Wind speeds were off the charts. Temperature readings were fluctuating wildly. It was, objectively speaking, a terrible time to attempt a landing. Hold on, he said calmly. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The shuttle plunged deeper into the storm. Lightning crackled across the hull. The entire craft shook violently as it fought against winds that would have torn a Quillen vessel into pieces. And inside, the humans were arguing about whether they should have brought marshmallows. The shuttle hit the ground harder than Doyun had intended. But nothing broke. That was good enough for him. Through the viewport, he could see the landscape of GC7742 for the first time with his own eyes rather than through sensors and data screens. It was beautiful, in a harsh, unforgiving way. Rocky terrain stretched out in all directions, dotted with strange vegetation that looked almost like earth trees but with purple-tinted leaves. The sky was a strange orange color from the atmospheric compounds, and the twin suns cast double shadows across everything. In the distance, mountains rose up with snow-capped peaks that reflected the sunlight. Atmospheric readings confirm the data, Ji-Wan said, checking her instruments. Breathable with filters. Sulfur dioxide levels are annoying but not lethal. Temperature outside is currently 22 degrees. That's perfect, Heijin said, already unsealing her harness. Room temperature by human standards. On the orbital station, Vrenth was monitoring their telemetry with growing disbelief. They had survived the landing. That was already more than he had expected. He opened a communication channel. Human team, this is station control. Please confirm your status. We're fine, Doyun's voice came back, calm and steady. All team members accounted for. No injuries. Beginning exterior survey now. You just survived atmospheric entry during a Class 5 storm, Vrenth said. You should wait for conditions to improve. The storm has passed, Doyun said. And we're on a schedule. Opening the hatch now. Vrenth watched through the shuttle's external cameras as the hatch opened. The 6 humans stepped out onto the surface of the Death World, wearing only basic environment suits. Not the heavy protective gear that other species would require. Just simple suits with air filters and temperature regulation. Taemin was the first to look around. He picked up a rock and examined it closely. Volcanic in origin, probably basalt with some interesting mineral inclusions. The soil composition looks decent for agriculture, if we can neutralize the acidity. Everything is so interesting, Heijin said, her voice full of excitement. She was already moving toward the nearest vegetation, scanner in hand. Look at these plant analogs. The purple coloring suggests they use a different photosynthetic process. Maybe something based on... She stopped talking abruptly. The other humans froze as well. From behind a rock formation, something emerged. It was massive, easily the size of the 400-kilogram apex predator that Vrenth had warned them about. Its body was covered in armored plates that looked like stone. 6 legs supported its bulk, and its head featured a mouth full of serrated teeth. 2 eyes, glowing with a pale yellow light, fixed on the humans. Vrenth's antenna shot straight up in alarm. Humans! That is an apex predator! Return to the shuttle immediately! The creature took a step forward. Then another. It was moving slowly, cautiously, sizing up these strange new things that had invaded its territory. A low, rumbling sound came from its throat. Sunwoo stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and the other team members. His hand went to his belt and pulled out a small device. Vrenth recognized it as a sonic deterrent. Something designed to scare animals without harming them. Easy there, big guy, Sunwoo said quietly. We're not here to hurt you. Just passing through. The creature's rumbling grew louder. It lowered its head, preparing to charge. Sunwoo pressed the button on the sonic deterrent. A loud, piercing sound echoed across the landscape. It was similar to an air horn, sharp and aggressive. The creature jerked its head back, startled. The rumbling stopped. It took a step backward. That's right, Sunwoo said. Not prey. Not worth the trouble. Move along. The creature stared at him for another long moment. Then, with surprising speed for something so large, it turned and lumbered away. Within seconds, it had disappeared behind the rock formation. Heijin immediately pulled out her camera and ran in the direction the creature had gone. Did anyone get clear footage? I need documentation for the database. Heijin, wait! Mireille called out, but the xenobiologist was already climbing over rocks to get a better view. Vrenth felt like his organs were trying to escape his body. You just encountered a predator that could have killed you all. And your response? Is to chase it? We need to document the local wildlife, Heijin called back. Don't worry. I'm keeping a safe distance. Over the next several hours, the human team unloaded their equipment and began setting up base camp. They worked efficiently, like they had done this 100 times before. Prefabricated structures were assembled using power tools. Solar panels were deployed. A water filtration system was connected to a nearby stream. Jiwon supervised the construction with the practiced eye of someone who had built in extreme environments before. Make sure the foundation anchors go deep. The seismic data suggests this area is relatively stable, but we need to be prepared for quakes. Taemin was taking soil samples, running them through a portable analyzer. The pH is high, like I thought. But we can work with this. Some earth plants actually prefer alkaline soil, and if we introduce the right bacteria, we can neutralize it over time. As the planet's twin suns began to set, the temperature started to drop rapidly. Within an hour, it had fallen from 22 degrees to -15. Within 2 hours, it was -30. Temperature drop is more extreme than predicted, Jiwon reported. But the insulation in the structures is holding. Internal temperature is stable, at 20 degrees. Vrenth checked his instruments. -30 degrees. That was colder than anything his species could survive without extensive life support. How are you managing that temperature? Your suits are not rated for spudivals. We turned on the heaters, Doyun said simply, and we're building a fire. A fire? In those wind conditions? In the protected area near the main structure, Doyun clarified. Jiwon designed a windbreak. We'll be fine. The external cameras showed the humans gathering outside around a contained fire. They had set up portable chairs and were heating their rations over the flames. Heijin was showing the others pictures she had taken of the predator. Taemin was examining rock samples by firelight. Mireille was updating her medical database with environmental data. A-team. It looked, Vrenth thought with growing confusion, exactly like what humans called camping. They were treating the death world like a recreational activity. The atmospheric sulfur compounds are actually not too bad, Heijin was saying. It's like being near a hot spring. Kind of smells like rotten eggs, but you get used to it. The gravity is noticeable, Sunwoo admitted. But it's good strength training. Give it a few weeks, and we'll adapt. Jiwon held up a small plant sample. I found something interesting. This plant seems to be edible. Similar to earth succulents. I ran it through the chemical analyzer and the toxicity is minimal. Don't eat it yet, Mireille warned. We need to do proper testing first. I'm not stupid, Jiwon said. But it's promising. If the local plants are edible, that changes everything. Doyun was making notes on his datapad when Vrenth's voice came through the communication channel again. I must inform you that I have been monitoring your vital signs. Your heart rates are elevated. Your oxygen consumption is higher than normal. And your body temperatures show signs of stress response. That's normal for the first day, Doyun said. We're adjusting to the gravity and atmosphere. Give us 48 hours, and those readings will normalize. Humans are very good at adapting. But you are on a Class 12, death world. Vrenth, Doyun said gently. Can I ask you something? What is your homeworld's gravity? Vrenth, 0.7 standard. Vrenth answered. And temperature range? 15 to 25 degrees, as I mentioned before. And your planet has dangerous weather? We have rain sometimes, Vrenth said. And occasional wind. But nothing like what you are experiencing. That's the difference, Doyun said. Earth has hurricanes with winds over 200 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can tear buildings apart. Earthquakes that level cities. Volcanoes that change the climate. Floods, droughts, wildfires, blizzards. We evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill us. So we learned to adapt. We learned to build structures that could withstand disasters. We learned to find food and water in extreme conditions. This planet is hostile, yes, but it's not that different from home. Vrenth was quiet for a long moment. Your species evolved on a death world. Yes, Doyun said. We did. And then we spread across it anyway. We built cities in earthquake zones. We lived in the frozen Arctic and the scorching Sahara. We crossed oceans and climbed mountains. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to see what was there. So, when you show us a planet rated unlivable, we see a challenge. We see an adventure. We see home. The night deepened. The temperature continued to drop, reaching -40 by midnight. The wind picked up, howling across the landscape at 80 kilometers per hour. In the Galactic Council's evaluation, these were lethal conditions. Inside their shelter, the humans were warm and comfortable. They had dinner together, sharing stories and making plans for the next day. Heijin wanted to track the predator again. Taemin wanted to investigate the volcanic regions. Jiwon wanted to test the local materials for construction purposes. Outside, the fire still burned in its protected area, a small point of warmth and light against the hostile darkness of the death world. And on the orbital station, Vrenth watched in wonder as the humans did the impossible. They weren't just surviving. They were thriving. They were making this deadly planet look easy. Perhaps, he thought, there was more to these strange, soft-skinned bipeds than he had understood. Perhaps the death world they came from had made them stronger than anyone realized. Or perhaps, he thought with something like hope, humans were just built different. 3 weeks had passed since the human survey team landed on GC 7742, and word had spread throughout the Galactic Council. The humans were not only alive but actively expanding their operations. Species from across the galaxy sent observers to witness what they assumed would be a slow-motion disaster. Instead, they found something that defied all their expectations. Kyung-ho stepped off the transport shuttle and took his first breath of filtered GC 7742 air. As a botanist and agricultural specialist, he had reviewed all the data about this planet. The soil was wrong. The atmosphere was toxic. The temperature swings were extreme. By every measure, nothing from Earth should be able to grow here. He was excited to prove that wrong. "Welcome to paradise," Taemin said, greeting him at the landing pad. The geologist looked healthier than in his file photos. The higher gravity had added muscle to his frame. How was the trip? One long, Kyung-ho said, stretching. But I'm here now. Show me the soil samples. The base camp had grown significantly. What started as a few prefab structures was now a proper settlement. Solar panels covered the roofs. A greenhouse frame was under construction. Storage units lined one side of the compound. A vehicle bay housed 2 all-terrain rovers, and surrounding it all was a simple fence with sensors to detect approaching wildlife. Inside the main building, Kyung-ho met the rest of the team. They looked comfortable and confident, like they had been here for months instead of weeks. Heijin showed him her growing database of local species. Jiwon explained the structural improvements she had made after the first few quakes. Sunwoo demonstrated the wildlife deterrent system that kept the predators at a respectful distance. But what interested Kyung-ho most was the soil. He spent the first 2 days analyzing samples from different areas around the base. The pH was high, as expected. Mineral content was unusual, but workable. The presence of sulfur compounds was a challenge, but not impossible to overcome. By the 3rd day, he was ready to begin his experiments. "I'm going to try something crazy," he announced at dinner that evening. "Crazier than being on a death world?" Taemin asked with a grin. "I'm going to plant potatoes," Kyung-ho said. The room fell silent. Then Heijin started laughing. "Of course. Potatoes. The most resilient crop humanity has ever domesticated. They can grow in almost any soil," Kyung-ho explained. "High altitude, low altitude, acidic, alkaline. They're tough. If anything from Earth can grow here, it's potatoes." Doyun nodded. "Do it." If we can grow food here, it changes everything. While Kyung-ho prepared his agricultural experiments, more observers arrived from the Galactic Council. Vrenth was among them, returning to see the impossible progress with his own eyes. He was accompanied by representatives from 5 other species, all of whom had expressed disbelief at the reports coming from GC 7742. They gathered in the observation area that G1 had built specifically for visitors. It was enclosed, climate-controlled, and safe. The perfect place for species that couldn't survive the outside environment to watch the humans work. "This is impossible," said Kelth, a representative of the aquatic Delphia species. Her translator conveyed the rippling sounds of her language into standard galactic. "The structural integrity of those buildings should not hold in this seismic zone." "Human engineering," G1 said proudly, giving them a tour via video link. "We build for earthquakes on Earth. These structures have flexible foundations and reinforced frames. They can handle a magnitude 7 quake without major damage." "And the temperature regulation?" asked another observer, a crystalline being called Thren. "Your species cannot naturally survive these extremes. Insulation, heating, and cooling systems," Jiwan explained. "Technologies we've used for centuries. When it's cold, we heat the interior. When it's hot, we cool it. Simple. But the energy requirements: solar power during the day, stored battery power at night. The twin suns provide excellent energy collection, and we're working on geothermal options. This planet has plenty of volcanic activity we can tap into." On the 4th day of their visit, the observers witnessed something that would become legendary in Galactic Council records. A magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck the region. The warning came from Yuna, the atmospheric scientist who had recently arrived. She had been studying the planet's geological sensors when she noticed the precursor signs. "Seismic activity incoming. Everyone to safety positions." The humans moved with practiced efficiency. Those outside secured equipment and returned to the reinforced structures. Those inside moved away from windows and heavy objects. The whole process took less than 3 minutes. The observers watched in horror as the ground began to shake. Through the windows, they could see the landscape rippling like water. Rocks tumbled down hillsides. The strange purple trees swayed violently. Dust rose in clouds from the disturbed soil. Inside the human structures, things rattled and shifted. A few books fell from shelves. Some equipment swayed on its mounting brackets. But nothing collapsed. Nothing broke. The flexible foundations absorbed the shock. The reinforced frames held firm. When the shaking stopped after 45 seconds, the humans immediately began their response protocol. Teams went outside to check for damage. Engineers inspected the structures. Mireille confirmed that everyone was uninjured. Within 20 minutes, they had completed a full damage assessment. The result: minor cosmetic damage only. No injuries. No structural failures. Full operational capacity maintained. Vrenth's antennae were rigid with shock. "My species would have lost everyone in that quake. Our buildings would have collapsed. Our equipment would have been destroyed. How did you survive?" "Calm." Doyun looked at him calmly. "Earth has major earthquakes regularly. Japan, California, Chile, New Zealand. Humans have built entire cities in earthquake zones. We've been dealing with this for thousands of years. We know how to build for it. We know how to respond to it. This was just another Tuesday for us." "But why?" Vrenth asked. It was the question he kept coming back to. Why build cities in earthquake zones? Why not avoid those areas? "Ask. Because that's where people wanted to live," Doyun said simply. "Those areas had resources, or good ports, or beautiful views. Or they were near family. So we learned to build safely there. Humans don't let hostile environments dictate where we can live. We adapt." The observers left more confused than when they arrived. Every piece of conventional wisdom about planetary colonization said that GC-7742 should be abandoned. But the humans were not only surviving, they were preparing for long-term settlement. Kyung-ho's potato experiment provided the next shock to galactic expectations. After 2 weeks of careful cultivation in treated soil, the first green shoots appeared above ground. The plants were growing, not just surviving, but actually thriving. The key was introducing earth bacteria to the soil, Kyung-ho explained to Haejin, who was documenting everything. The bacteria process the sulfur compounds and adjust the pH. It's the same technique we use in Earth's most damaged agricultural areas. Bioremediation, combined with selective breeding, and the potatoes are handling the temperature swings better than expected. I chose a variety that's used in the Andes Mountains, back on Earth. High altitude, extreme conditions, huge temperature variations. They're perfect for this environment. Within a month, Kyung-ho had expanded his garden to include several other earth crops: rice, wheat, soybeans, tomatoes, each carefully selected for its resilience and adaptability. Not all of them would succeed, but enough would to prove the concept. More importantly, he had also successfully cultivated several of the local plant species. Working with Haejin's biological data, he identified which native plants were edible and which could be domesticated. One particular species, which they started calling purple spinach, turned out to be highly nutritious and grew aggressively with minimal care. This planet can support agriculture, Kyung-ho reported to Do-yoon. Both earth crops and native species. With proper soil treatment and some infrastructure, we could feed a colony of thousands. That information changed everything. The Galactic Council had assumed GC-7742 would always require expensive supply shipments from off-world. But if the humans could grow their own food, the economics of colonization shifted dramatically. Then Taemin made his discovery. He had been exploring the volcanic regions, taking samples, and mapping geological features. The higher gravity made the work exhausting, but he had grown stronger over the weeks. His muscles had adapted. His cardiovascular system had adjusted. What once left him breathless now felt almost normal. In a lava field 300 kilometers from base camp, his scanner detected something unusual. He called Do-yoon immediately. "You need to see this," Taemin said. "There are rare earth minerals here. The volcanic activity has been bringing them up from deep in the planet's crust." Do-yoon made the journey out to Taemin's location the next day. What he saw made his heart race. The readings were incredible. Platinum, iridium, osmium, and other rare elements existed in concentrations that would be economically viable to mine. "This is a fortune," Do-yoon said quietly. "And the best part?" Taemin said with a grin. "The conditions here are too extreme for most species to work safely. But for humans, it's just a hard day's work. We have a natural advantage." That night, Do-yoon sent his report to the Galactic Council. GC-7742. The death world that everyone had written off was potentially one of the richest planets in this sector, and only humans could realistically extract those resources. The colony population grew to 50. Then 100. More specialists arrived. Engineers, miners, scientists, teachers, medical staff. They came from Earth and from human colonies on other worlds. They came because it was an opportunity. They came because it was a challenge. They came because humans had always pushed into new frontiers. The observers kept watching, kept recording, kept trying to understand. How did soft-skinned humans survive where others could not? How did they thrive in conditions that should kill them? Vrenth thought he was beginning to understand. Earth itself was classified as a Class 9 death world. The humans had evolved there, adapted to it, conquered it. They had survived ice ages and heat waves. They had outlasted predators and plagues. They had built civilizations on fault lines and coastlines and mountainsides. They weren't surviving GC-7742 despite being human. They were surviving because they were human. The Galactic Council began reassessing their classification system. Clearly, something was wrong with their measurements, if a Class 12 death world could support a growing human colony. But changing the classification would mean admitting that their understanding of livable was based on limited perspectives. In the greenhouse, Kyung-ho harvested the first potatoes grown on GC 7742. They were small, a bit misshapen, but perfectly edible. He washed one and took a bite. It tasted like victory. The colony that the humans had named Jeju Station now housed 300 people. It sprawled across 5 square kilometers of what used to be barren, hostile terrain. Permanent structures had replaced most of the prefab buildings. A school taught children in reinforced classrooms. A medical center provided healthcare. A marketplace sold goods from both Earth and locally produced items. Gardens grew in treated soil. Life, real life, had taken root on the death world. Salmon stood in her office overlooking the colony and felt a sense of pride. As the colony administrator, on the 5, she had helped coordinate this growth from a handful of survey members to a thriving community. People had homes here. They had jobs. They had purpose. Some had even started families. Her own daughter would be born in 3 months. The medical team assured her that the higher gravity would not affect the pregnancy. Human women had given birth in low gravity on space stations and high gravity on massive planets. The human body was remarkably adaptable when it came to continuing the species. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. Junho entered, looking worried. The weather monitoring specialist was young, brilliant, and had a tendency toward anxiety. Right now, that anxiety was written clearly across his face. "We have a problem," he said, pulling up his datapad. "A major storm system is forming in the Western Ocean. It's big, Salmon. Really big." She looked at the data. The storm was massive. A swirling vortex of energy that covered an area larger than some of Earth's continents. Wind speeds at the center were already exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. It was moving toward their location. "Classification?" she asked. "By Earth standards, it would be a Category 5 hurricane," Junho said. "But the atmospheric conditions here make it worse. Wind speeds could reach 250 kilometers per hour. Temperature will drop to -40. We're looking at 18 to 24 hours of extreme conditions." Salmon pulled up the communication channel to the Galactic Council observers. Vrenth appeared on the screen almost immediately. "We see the storm on our sensors," Vrenth said before she could speak. His antennae were quivering with agitation. "You must evacuate immediately. We have transport ships ready. We can have everyone off the surface in 6 hours. "Thank you for the offer," Salmon said calmly, "but we're going to shelter in place." There was a long silence. Then Vrenth spoke, his translator struggling to convey his distress. "You cannot be serious. This storm will destroy everything. The wind speeds alone will tear your structures apart. The temperature drop will freeze anyone caught outside. The rain will be like bullets at those velocities. Our structures are rated for these conditions," Salmon said. "We built for this. We knew storms like this would happen eventually. That's why we prepared." "But the children," Vrenth said. "You have human children in the colony. How can you risk their lives?" "The children will be safe in the reinforced shelters," Salmon said firmly. "We have emergency supplies, backup power, medical facilities, and experienced people who know how to handle extreme weather. We're going to be fine." She ended the transmission and called a colony-wide meeting. Within an hour, everyone had gathered in the main assembly hall. Parents held young children. The elderly sat in the front rows. Workers from the mines, farms, and construction sites crowded the back. "We have a major storm approaching," Salmon announced. "It will hit us in approximately 8 hours. I want to be clear about what we're facing. This is a powerful storm. It's going to be loud, scary, and uncomfortable. But we are prepared for this. Our buildings are strong. Our emergency protocols are tested. We have enough supplies for several days if needed. The question is whether we shelter in place or evacuate." She paused and looked around the room. "This is your home now. This colony is built by your hands and your effort, so I'm putting it to a vote. Show of hands. Who wants to evacuate?" Not a single hand went up. "Who wants to shelter in place and ride out the storm?" Every hand in the room rose. Some people even stood up to make sure their vote was seen. Salmon felt her eyes water slightly. These people trusted the colony. They trusted each other. They trusted that human engineering and human resilience would see them through. "Then we shelter in place," she said. "Let's get to work." The next 8 hours were a controlled rush of activity. Emergency supplies were distributed to every shelter. Water tanks were topped off. Backup generators were tested. The greenhouse dome, which was newer and less proven, received extra reinforcement. Everyone was assigned to a shelter location. Medical teams positioned themselves strategically throughout the colony. The alien observers watched from orbit in mounting horror. They had requested immediate evacuation to the station, where they would be safe. Every single alien representative had left the surface. Only the humans remained. Junho tracked the storm's approach with increasing tension. His screens showed a massive wall of churning clouds moving toward them like a living thing. Lightning flashed constantly within the storm system. The temperature ahead of the storm front was already dropping. 2 hours until arrival, he announced over the colony-wide communication system. All personnel should be in their assigned shelters. Final equipment checks now. Well, people. 8 and 2. Well, people commenting of 19. Do-Yun was in one of the main shelters with 50 other colonists. The shelter was designed to house people during exactly this kind of emergency. Thick walls, no windows, independent life support, enough food and water for 3 days. It was cramped but secure. Children were asking questions. Parents were answering as best they could. Some people were reading. Others were playing games on datapads. A few were trying to sleep. It was, Do-Yun thought, remarkably calm, given the circumstances. The storm arrived exactly when Junho had predicted. The first sign was the wind. It started as a low whistle that grew rapidly into a roar. Within minutes, it sounded like a freight train was parked outside the shelter. The walls shook. Dust filtered down from the ceiling seams. The lights flickered once, but held steady. "Wind speed now 180 kilometers per hour, Junho reported over the communication system. He was in the weather monitoring station, one of the most reinforced buildings in the colony. Temperature outside -35 and dropping. Rain has started. Everyone stay inside and stay calm." On the orbital station, the observers watched through satellite feeds as the storm engulfed the human colony. The structures disappeared into a gray wall of wind and precipitation. Visibility dropped to 0. All they could see was chaos. "They are going to die," Kelth said quietly. "There is no way their structures can withstand that." Vrenth said nothing. He was watching the telemetry data from the colony. Life signs were all normal. Power systems were functioning. Communication was still active. Somehow, impossibly, the humans were surviving. Inside the shelters, the colonists were dealing with the reality of the storm. It was loud. The constant roar of wind made conversation difficult. The temperature regulation systems were working hard to keep the interior warm as the outside plunged to -40. The walls shook with each gust, a constant reminder of the violence happening outside. But people were managing. In one shelter, a teacher had organized the children into a story circle, keeping them distracted. In another, someone had started a card game tournament. In Do-Yun's shelter, someone had broken out a guitar and people were singing old songs from Earth. 6 hours into the storm, disaster struck. A sensor alarm went off in the colony control center. The greenhouse dome, the newest structure, had suffered a breach. One of the support struts had failed under the extreme wind load. The dome was losing pressure and structural integrity. "We need to fix it now," Jiwon said over the communication channel. If the dome collapses completely, we lose 6 months of agricultural work. No one goes outside in these conditions, Mireille insisted. It's suicide. It's 300 meters from the main building to the greenhouse, Jiwon said. We have heavy weather gear. We can make it. Sunwoo was already suiting up. I'm going. We need at least 3 people for the repair. Minho, the construction chief, grabbed his gear as well. I'm in. It's my construction. My responsibility, Jiwon nodded. Then I'm going too. I designed the fix. Let's move. The 3 of them entered the airlock, connecting the main building to the outside. They checked each other's suits carefully. Heavy weather gear designed for the worst conditions Earth could throw at them, now being tested beyond those limits. The door opened, and the storm tried to rip them off their feet. The wind was a physical force, pushing and pulling from every direction. The rain felt like needles on their faceplates. Visibility was measured in meters. They linked themselves together with safety cables and started walking. Each step was a battle. The higher gravity made their suits feel twice as heavy. The wind tried to knock them down. The cold tried to seep through the insulation. On the orbital station, the observers watched through the external cameras in disbelief. 3 humans were outside in conditions that would kill any other known species within minutes. And they were walking steadily toward the damaged greenhouse. They are insane, Thren said, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. What are they doing? They're saving their crops, Vrenth said quietly. He had come to understand humans better over the past months. They didn't just survive. They protected what they had built. They took risks for things they valued. Inside the greenhouse, the 3 humans assessed the damage. The support strut had cracked under stress, and the dome's structural integrity was compromised. They had brought a replacement strut and the tools needed to install it. Working in the screaming wind and freezing temperature, they removed the damaged strut and fitted the new one. Jiwon called out instructions. Sunwoo held pieces in place. Minho operated the power tools with hands that were growing numb despite the insulated gloves. It took 45 minutes. 45 minutes of fighting the wind, the cold, and the constant barrage of freezing rain. But they did it. The new strut was installed. The dome pressure stabilized. The greenhouse was saved. The journey back to the main building was easier now that they knew they could do it. They stumbled through the airlock and collapsed on the floor, exhausted but triumphant. Well, Sunwoo said, his breath coming in gasps. That was unpleasant. But we did it, Jiwon said. The greenhouse is secure. Minho just laughed. This is going in my memoirs. The day I did construction work in a Category 5 hurricane on a death world. The storm continued for another 12 hours. The wind slowly decreased from catastrophic to merely severe. The rain turned to sleet, and then stopped. The temperature began to rise as the storm system moved east. By the time the twin suns rose on a new day, the worst had passed. Salmon was one of the first to exit the shelter. She looked around at the colony with a critical eye. Some solar panels were damaged. There was debris scattered everywhere. A few of the older structures had minor damage. But everything important was intact. No collapsed buildings. No catastrophic failures. No casualties. The colonists emerged from their shelters and began cleanup operations. Children ran around, excited to see the aftermath. Workers assessed damage and started repairs. Life resumed. On the orbital station, Vrenth stared at the images coming from the surface. The human colony had survived. Not just survived, but emerged, ready to continue, as if a world-ending storm was just a minor inconvenience. He opened a communication channel to Salmon. You survived, he said, stating the obvious because he could think of nothing else to say. Of course we did, Salmon said with a tired smile. We're humans. We've been dealing with hurricanes for thousands of years. This was just a bigger one. But why? Vrenth asked. It was still the question he couldn't answer. Why stay? Why risk everything? Salmon looked around at the colony. At the people working together. At the buildings standing strong. At the life that had been built here on this impossible world. Because this is home, she said simply. And you don't abandon home just because the weather gets rough. 2 weeks later, Salmon gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hana, which meant one in Korean. The first human born on GC 7742. The first of what would be many generations to call this Death World home. 6 months after the storm, Jeju Station had become something that the Galactic Council had never thought possible. A thriving human colony on a Class 12 Death World, with a population of over 800 people and infrastructure designed for 2,000. The colony exported rare earth minerals, unique biological samples, and agricultural products. It had become, against all predictions, economically viable. The Galactic Council chambers on the station orbiting the planet were filled with representatives from dozens of species. They had come to witness a historic debate. The question before them was simple but profound. Should GC 7742 be reclassified? Doyun stood at the speaker's podium, representing humanity. He had been chosen because he was there from the beginning. He had seen the colony grow from a handful of survey members to a permanent settlement. He understood what this planet meant to humans and what it represented to the broader galactic community. Honored representatives, he began, his voice calm and measured. 6 months ago, this planet was considered the most hostile environment known to the Council, a place where no intelligent species could survive, let alone thrive. Today, 800 humans call it home. The question is not whether the planet is dangerous. It clearly is. The question is whether our classification system accounts for the reality that different species have different capabilities. Vrenth sat in the audience, his antenna quivering slightly. He had been transformed by his experience with the humans. Where once he saw only reckless risk-takers, he now saw something else. A species that had been forged in hardship and had emerged stronger for it. On the large display screens, images from Jeju Station played continuously. Children walking to school in the higher gravity, their legs strong and their movements confident. Workers in the mines, extracting precious minerals in conditions that would incapacitate most species. Farmers tending crops in greenhouses, growing food in soil that had been toxic 6 months ago. A marketplace where people bought and sold goods, laughed, lived. The classification system calls this a Class 12 Death World. Doyun continued. By objective measurements, that is accurate. The gravity is high. The temperature swings are extreme. The seismic activity is constant. The atmospheric conditions are harsh. These facts have not changed. But what we have learned is that human standards and galactic standards are not the same. A Quillan representative raised a limb. Are you suggesting that humans are somehow superior to other species? No, Doyun said firmly. I am suggesting that humans are different. Our homeworld, Earth, is itself classified as a Class 9 Death World by your standards. We evolved in conditions that most species would find lethal. That evolutionary history has shaped us. It has made us resilient in ways that species from gentler worlds are not. This is not superiority. It is specialization. Another representative spoke up. A being made of crystalline structures that resonated sound. But if we reclassify this world as safe for humans, we must acknowledge that there are entire categories of planets that other species cannot colonize but humans can. This will create economic and political imbalances. Yes, Doyun agreed. It will. But denying reality does not change it. Humans can live on worlds that others cannot. Just as aquatic species like the Delphia can thrive on water worlds that would be impossible for us. Just as crystalline species can exist in radiation-rich environments that would kill organic life. Every species has advantages based on their evolutionary history. Ours is tolerance for extreme conditions. Salmon's voice came through on a communication link from the colony surface. Her image appeared on the screens. Her infant daughter Hannah, visible in her arms. "I want to speak to the concerns about children," Salmon said. "I know many of you have expressed worry about human young being raised in these conditions. My daughter was born here 2 weeks ago. She is healthy. The medical team confirms that she is developing normally. Human children are more resilient than you might think. On Earth, children live in the Himalayas at extreme altitudes. They live in the Arctic where temperatures reach -50. They live on coastlines threatened by hurricanes. We protect our children, but we also teach them to be strong." The image on the screen shifted to show a school session. Human children, ranging in age from 5 to 12, were learning about the local ecosystem. They looked healthy, happy, and engaged. The teacher was explaining how the native predators hunted, showing safety protocols and respect for the wildlife. "We are not raising our children in a war zone," Salmon continued. "We are raising them in a frontier settlement. They learn caution and awareness. They learn to respect the environment. They learn that humans can thrive anywhere if they are smart, prepared, and work together. These are good lessons." Kyung-ho appeared on the screen next, standing in a thriving greenhouse. Behind him, rows of earth crops grew alongside native plants. The purple-tinted leaves of the local vegetation mixed with the green of potato plants and the golden stalks of wheat. 6 months ago, the council's experts said nothing could grow here, Kyung-ho said. Today, we are not only growing food, we are producing a surplus. We have successfully cultivated 12 earth crop species and domesticated 4 native plant species. The agricultural potential of this planet is enormous, and it is only accessible because humans can work here safely. Taemin was next, broadcasting from the mining operations. Behind him, workers in environment suits operated equipment that extracted rare earth minerals from volcanic rock formations. "The mineral wealth of this planet is estimated in the trillions of credits," Taemin said. "Platinum, iridium, rare earth elements that are essential for advanced technology. Most species cannot safely operate in these volcanic zones. The heat, the toxic gases, the unstable terrain, but humans can. With proper equipment and safety protocols, we can work here. This planet has resources that the galaxy needs, and humans can provide them." The presentation continued with testimony from engineers, scientists, medical professionals, and ordinary colonists. Each one told the same story from a different angle. This planet was dangerous, yes, but for humans, it was manageable. It was livable. It was home. Finally, Heijin appeared on the screen. The xenobiologist had spent 6 months cataloging the unique life forms on GC 7742. Her database now contained over 3,000 species, many of them never before seen by galactic science. "This planet has incredible biodiversity," Heijin said, her enthusiasm evident even through the communication link. "Unique evolutionary adaptations, novel biochemistry, species that could revolutionize medicine, materials, science, and our understanding of biology itself. But most species cannot safely study this planet. The environment is too hostile for sustained research operations. Humans can bridge that gap. We can be the researchers, the explorers, the ones who unlock the secrets of harsh worlds." When all the presentations were complete, Doyun returned to the podium. "The Galactic Council has a choice," he said. "You can maintain the current classification system and pretend that all species are equally capable of surviving in all environments. Or you can acknowledge the truth. Different species excel in different conditions. Some species are better suited to water worlds, some to low-gravity environments, some to stable, temperate planets with minimal weather, and some, like humans, are suited to worlds that are harsh, unstable, and unforgiving." He paused and looked around the chamber. "There are currently 37 planets in Council space, classified as Class 10 or higher death worlds. All of them are considered uncolonizable, But humans are already surveying 3 of them for potential settlement. Not because we enjoy suffering, but because we see opportunity where others see only danger. These worlds have resources, they have scientific value, and they are empty. No one else wants them, so let humans have them. Let us turn death worlds into living worlds. The debate continued for 3 more hours. Representatives argued about economic implications, political boundaries, resource rights, and philosophical questions about the nature of habitability. But in the end, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Humans had done what no other species could do. They had colonized a Class 12 death world and made it prosper. The vote was called. The result was not unanimous, but it was clear. The Galactic Council would create a new classification category: human, viable, death worlds. Planets that remained in the death world categories for most species but were considered colonizable by humans under specific conditions. GC 7742 would be officially renamed Jeju 2 at the colony's request. It would remain a Class 12 death world in the standard classification, but would be marked as human viable. Other species could visit with proper equipment and safety measures, but permanent settlement was only recommended for humans. 3 other planets in nearby systems would receive similar classifications. The Council agreed to lease these worlds to human colonization efforts in exchange for a share of the resources extracted and scientific data gathered. When the vote was announced, cheers erupted in Jeju Station. People hugged each other. Children who had been born on the colony jumped and laughed. This was validation. This was recognition that they had achieved something remarkable. Vrenth approached Do-Yoon after the session ended. The Quillen's antennae were held in a position that indicated respect. "You have changed the galaxy," Vrenth said quietly, "by proving that you can survive where others cannot. You have opened worlds that were previously beyond reach. I do not know if this is a good thing or a dangerous thing." Do-Yoon smiled. "Probably both. Humans have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We know we are unusual. We know we can endure conditions that others cannot. But we do not want to dominate. We want to explore. We want to understand. We want to turn impossible places into homes." "Why?" Vrenth asked. It was still the question he struggled with. Why seek out harsh worlds when there are gentler places available? Do-Yoon thought for a moment. Because we can. Because it is a challenge. Because humans have always been driven to see what is beyond the next mountain, across the next ocean, or on the next planet. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years with ice ages and droughts and disasters. We survived. We adapted. We thrived. That history is in our bones now. When you show us a planet rated unlivable, we do not see an end. We see a beginning. Back on Jeju Station, life continued. New colonists arrived weekly. The population was projected to reach 2,000 within a year. Plans were being drawn for a second settlement on another continent. The mining operations were expanding. The agricultural zones were growing. Taemin stood at the landing pad, greeting a new group of arrivals. They looked nervous as they stepped off the shuttle. Their eyes wide as they took in the harsh landscape, the strange sky, the unfamiliar sounds of an alien world. "Welcome to paradise," Taemin said with his characteristic grin. "The gravity will feel heavy for a few weeks, but you will get used to it. The temperature swings are manageable with proper clothing. Do not worry about the earthquakes. We barely notice them anymore. And the local predators are actually pretty shy once they learn humans live here." One of the new arrivals, a young woman, looked around nervously. "Are you sure this is safe?" Taemin laughed. "Safe? No. This is a death world. It is dangerous, unpredictable, and will constantly challenge you. But it is also beautiful, full of opportunity, and it is home. You will learn to love it." As the new colonists were led toward the settlement, Taman looked up at the orange sky where the twin suns were setting. In orbit above, the alien observers were still watching, still trying to understand how humans made this impossible place work. In his personal log that night, Do-yoon wrote the words that would become the unofficial motto of Jeju Station. They called it unlivable. They said no one could survive here. They rated it as the most dangerous planet in known space. But they did not understand humans. We do not just survive in impossible places. We build homes there. We raise families there. We turn death worlds into living worlds. Because that is what humans do. We look at the impossible, and we make it possible. They called it unlivable. We called it home. The galaxy would never look at death worlds the same way again. And humanity would never stop seeking new horizons, no matter how impossible they seemed.